I caught them in the master bedroom I had painted by hand. Derek did not even flinch. He just smirked and asked, "What are you gonna do? Divorce me?" Then my sister stepped out from behind him, wearing the heirloom ring I thought was lost years ago. They had no idea that the folder I clutched contained enough evidence to dismantle their entire legacy. My name is Harlow Bennett, and I am 33 years old. The first thing that hit me was not the sound of the closing door, but the scent. It was a heavy, cloying gardenia perfume that clung to the air in the master bedroom, a smell that did not belong to me. I stood there, hand hovering over the mahogany banister, realizing with a sickening jolt that my own home suddenly felt like hostile territory. The hallway I had painted myself, the photos I had framed, everything seemed to reject me, as if the walls themselves had changed allegiance. I pushed open the heavy oak doors to the study, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Derek Halston, my husband of 5 years, was leaning against the antique desk. My sister, Tessa Bennett, stood behind him. She was not cowering. She was not ashamed. She was wearing my silk robe, the one Derek had bought me for our 2nd anniversary. Derek looked at me with a terrifying calmness. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass, took a slow sip, and looked me dead in the eye. He did not apologize. He simply smirked, a cold, calculated expression that made my blood run cold. "What are you gonna do?" "Divorce me," he asked, his voice dripping with arrogance. I felt the air leave my lungs. Before I could speak, Tessa reached up and smoothed a stray lock of hair, checking her reflection in the glass of the bookcase as if she were auditioning for a role she had just won. She placed a hand on Derek's shoulder, looked past me to the open door, and called out with a sickening familiarity, "Mom, she is here!" Vivian Halston marched into the room before the echo of that word died. She did not look at her son or the woman who was essentially her daughter-in-law's sister. She looked at her watch as if I were a meeting that had run overtime. "Pack her things," Vivian commanded to the air, though I knew the private security team was waiting just outside the frame. "I want this house cleared in 60 minutes. We cannot have this kind of instability around Derek right now." I reached for my phone to call a cab. To call anyone. No service. The bars at the top of the screen were gone. My hands shook as I tried to open my banking app, desperate to book a hotel room, to find a place to breathe. Account locked. Contact administrator. I tried my credit card app. Access denied. My wallet was full of dead plastic. They had not just broken my heart, they had coordinated a blackout. It was too precise, too immediate to be a coincidence. 2 burly security guards appeared and practically escorted me to the front porch. The neighbors were already out, phones raised like weapons, capturing my humiliation in high definition. Vivian stepped onto the threshold behind me, raising her voice just enough for the microphones to catch it. "We just want everyone safe," she declared, feigning a tremor in her voice as she addressed the onlookers. "It is a difficult time for our family, but we must prioritize mental health." She was spinning the narrative before I had even left the driveway. Derek followed me to the edge of the steps. He leaned in close, his breath smelling of expensive scotch and deceit. "I filed the papers at 9 this morning," he whispered, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. "You get nothing. Harlow, you signed the waiver. Remember, you are the one leaving the marital home." As he turned back, his briefcase clipped the doorframe. A single sheet of paper fluttered out and landed near my shoe. I bent down to pick it up, my fingers trembling. It was a printed email from their family lawyer. It had a timestamp from 3 weeks ago. Under a heading titled Harlow's Predicted Reactions, there was a bullet point that read, Scene 1, Shock and Paralysis. Ensure assets are frozen prior to confrontation. They had scripted my pain. They had rehearsed my destruction. I did not scream. I did not beg. I folded that piece of paper and slid it into my pocket. I gripped the handle of my suitcase and began to walk down the long driveway. The wheels scraped against the stone, a harsh, rhythmic grinding sound that filled the silence. I looked back one last time, not to cry, but to memorize the smug, victorious look on their faces. I etched every detail into my mind, because they thought this was the end of the story. They had no idea it was just the prologue. The cold night air bit through my thin coat, but the chill I felt was entirely internal. As I waited for the cab that took 40 minutes to arrive, my mind did not replay the affair itself. It replayed the architecture of the lie. I had spent 4 years as an event coordinator for the Larkspur Civic Group, a non-profit where disaster management was part of the job description. I knew how to read a room, how to spot the tension in a jawline before a donor pulled funding, and how to smile when the ceiling was literally leaking. I should have seen this coming. I thought back to the night I met Derek at the charity gala. He had cornered me near the champagne tower, looking like a savior in a tuxedo. "You are the only person here who looks real," he had said, his eyes scanning my face with an intensity that felt like adoration. At the time, I was flattered. Now, looking back, the red flags were waving violently. He knew my name before I introduced myself. He knew my shift ended at 11 o'clock and that I preferred sparkling water to wine. He had studied me like a dossier. Then there was Vivian. Our first lunch at the club was not a meeting, it was an interrogation. She had peered over her rimless glasses, cutting into her salad with surgical precision. Bennett, she had mused, testing the name on her tongue. Any relation to the political Bennetts in D.C.? Just small-town people. "I am afraid," I had replied, instinctively downplaying my background. I wanted to build my own life, separate from the weight of my family's history. I saw her shoulders drop, a physical sign of relief. She thought I was nobody. She thought I was safe to discard when the time came. Tessa had played her part perfectly, too. 2 years ago, she showed up at our doorstep with 2 suitcases and a story about a bad investment that wiped her out. I have nowhere else to go. I feel so useless. Tessa had sobbed into my shoulder, while Derek watched from the doorway. Vivian had taken an immediate, strange interest in her. "Poor dear," Vivian had cooed, patting Tessa's hand a little too affectionately. "We must take care of family. You have the hunger of a survivor." I thought she was being kind. I did not realize she was recruiting. The trap snapped shut the day Derek presented the prenuptial agreement. It was 300 pages thick, sitting on the kitchen island like a threat. When I reached for my reading glasses, Derek had laughed, a low, dismissive sound. "It is just standard procedure." "Babe," he had said, pouring me a glass of wine. "My father set it up for the trust. Do you really think I would use legal jargon against you? It is just paper." He made me feel petty for wanting to read it. He made me feel like I was the one ruining the romance with suspicion. I signed it to prove I loved him. I remembered seeing a clause about immediate vacation of marital residence upon notice of separation, but I had ignored it. I thought that clause was for strangers, not for us. In the last 6 months, the script had tightened. Derek started carrying a second phone. Work security, he had claimed. New protocols for the merger. Tessa was always at the house when I came home early, sitting in spots that used to be mine, drinking from my mugs. And Vivian ramped up the pressure. At family dinners, she would wait until guests were listening to ask pointed questions about my mood swings or my memory lapses. "You seem so fragile lately, Harlow," she would say loudly. "Maybe you should see Dr. Evans again. We worry about your stability," if I argued. I looked defensive. If I cried, I looked unstable. She was building a witness list, but they made one mistake. Just one. Last week, I came home to find Tessa searching for her lipstick in her purse. She dumped the contents on the counter, and among the cosmetics, a heavy brass key clattered onto the marble. It had the Halston Company logo embossed on the head, but it was old, tarnished. It was the master key to the archive room in the basement of the main estate, a room even Derek rarely entered. Where did you get that? I had asked. Tessa had snatched it up quickly, her eyes darting away. Found it in the junk drawer. Thought it was for the shed. I knew there was no junk drawer with Halston master keys. I had filed that image away, a single loose thread in their perfect tapestry. Now, sitting in the back of a smelly taxi, I realized that key was not for a shed. It was the answer to a question I had not yet asked. The porch light of Owen Hartley's house was the only warmth I had left in the world. Owen was a retired judge who had lived 3 houses down from the Halston estate for 20 years. He did not ask why I was standing on his doorstep with a suitcase and a face drained of color. He simply opened the door, poured me a glass of water, and handed me his secure landline. I did not call my parents. I did not call the police. I dialed a number I had memorized but never used. Bennett Ridge Partners, Legal Department. A crisp voice answered after 2 rings. "Connect me to Marina Sutter," I said, my voice steady for the first time in 2 hours. "Tell her it is Harlow. Tell her Protocol 7 is in effect." Marina was my cousin, the head of compliance at our family firm. We were not the kind of family that solved problems with screaming matches in the street. We solved them with audits and subpoenas. When I heard her breath catch on the other end, I set my first rule of engagement. I do not want them hurt physically. "Marina," I said, staring at the steam rising from the mug Owen had placed in front of me. "I do not want a fire. I want a verdict. I want them to sign their own sentences. Consider it done," Marina replied. "Go dark. Do not use your devices." I hung up and asked Owen for a yellow legal pad. I began to construct a timeline. I stripped away the heartbreak and looked at the evening as raw data. Tessa had entered the house at 6:15. Vivian had called security at 6:30. Derek had mentioned filing for divorce at 9 o'clock that morning. The synchronization was too perfect. It was a military operation disguised as a family dinner. Owen sat opposite me, cleaning his glasses with a slow, rhythmic motion. He had seen enough courtroom dramas to know the difference between a victim and a player. They are playing to the gallery. "Harlow," Owen said, his voice gravelly and low. Vivian spoke to the neighbors. She wanted witnesses. "They are acting for the camera." He paused, holding his glasses up to the light. "But the thing about a performance is that it leaves a record. If they are acting for the camera, then the camera can be a knife against them." He was right. I looked at my own phone, which lay dead on the table. My SIM card had been remotely deactivated. My email password had been changed 5 minutes after I walked out the door. This was not just Derek being petty. Someone was managing the Halston family systems with high-level administrative access. They were trying to scrub my digital footprint, to lock me out of my own history. "I need paper," I whispered to myself. "Digital can be erased. I need ink." I realized my strategy had to change. I could not fight them in the cloud. I had to fight them in the filing cabinets. I needed the physical prenuptial agreement, the notarized deed to the house, the receipts from the contractors who renovated the study. Just then, my phone screen lit up. It was the only thing that could get through a text message via Wi-Fi, which I had foolishly left on. It was from Tessa. "Harlow, I am so worried about you. You looked so manic tonight. Please, for your own sake, click this link. It is a crisis support group Mom found. We just want you to get help." Below the text was a hyperlink. It looked innocent enough. But I recognized the domain. It was a tracking pixel disguised as a resource page. If I clicked it, they would have my location, my device ID. And worse, they would have a digital record of me seeking crisis help immediately after the breakup. They were trying to build a medical history for me. They wanted to label me unstable. I felt a cold smirk touch my lips. I did not reply. I took a screenshot of the message, capturing the timestamp and the manipulative wording. Then I powered the phone down completely. "You are not going to answer?" Owen asked. No, I said, tearing the page off the legal pad and folding it into my pocket. They want to diagnose me. They want a crazy ex-wife. I stood up, feeling the steel enter my spine. I am going to let them think they have one. And while they are busy treating me like a patient, I will be dissecting them like a coroner. The clause is buried on page 214, Marina said. Her voice was tinny through the speaker of Owen's secure landline. It is called a reputation and stability covenant. Basically, if you cause a public scene or threaten the domestic tranquility of the estate, you forfeit your claim to the spousal support tier. It hit me like a physical blow, clarifying the chaos of the last 3 hours. The scene on the porch, Vivian shouting to the neighbors about safety. Derek's whispered provocation, it was all calculated. They were not just being cruel, they were manufacturing a breach of contract. They wanted me to scream. I realized aloud, my grip tightening on the handset. Vivian was directing a play. She needed footage of me looking unstable. Exactly, Marina replied. And I am seeing movement in the accounts. Small transfers, just under the federal reporting limit. Derek is siphoning assets into shell companies registered to distant relatives. He is not just leaving you, Harlow. He is liquidating the marriage. My mind flashed back to Tessa standing in the study. I had focused on her betrayal, but now my brain zeroed in on a specific detail. When she raised her hand to smooth her hair, her sleeve had slipped back, revealing a thick platinum bangle. It looked like a generic luxury piece, but I remembered the engraving on the inside clasp HFT09. I had seen that alphanumeric sequence on asset tags in Derek's private office. Halston Family Trust. Tessa is not wearing jewelry, I said, my voice hardening as the pieces clicked into place. She is wearing inventory. That bangle has a tracking code from the Internal Family Fund. It is a transaction marker. They are paying her to do this. Owen walked into the kitchen, holding a stack of warm, freshly printed papers. He laid them out on the table like a royal flush. I pulled the public records on the Lakeshore estate, Owen said, tapping the top page. You were living in a house of cards. Harlow. The property has 3 mortgages against it. The last one taken out only 4 months ago. The Halston Group is underwater. They are drowning in debt. The realization made me nauseous. Derek did not fall in love with my sister. He did not cheat because our spark had faded. He needed a financial reset. He needed a reason to divorce me that would trigger the penalty clauses, allowing him to keep my portion of the shared equity. Tessa broke, desperate, and jealous was just a hired wrecking ball. He was using her as a pawn to break the bond without losing his liquidity. Look at this, Owen said, pointing to a scanned document on the table. A loan guarantee for a commercial line of credit, dated 6 months ago. I leaned in, squinting at the bottom of the page. There was a signature, Harlow Bennett Halston, but the loop on the H was too high, and the T was crossed with an aggressive slash I never used. I never signed that, I whispered, tracing the ink on the paper. I was in Chicago that week for the regional conference. That is a forgery. If we can prove forgery and systematic financial abuse, Marina said, her tone shifting from advisor to prosecutor, then the entire prenuptial agreement is void. The protection clauses dissolve. You would not just be entitled to a settlement, you would be entitled to a forensic audit of everything they own. They think I am broken, I said, staring at the fake signature that had mortgaged my future. They think I am somewhere crying, terrified of their lawyers. Let them believe it, Marina advised. If they think you are paralyzed, they will get sloppy. They will try to move the big money before the courts open on Monday. I stood up, feeling a strange, icy calmness settle over me. I was done being the victim. I will give them exactly what they want, I said. I will send an email begging for a settlement. I will sound desperate. I will sound weak. And the moment they think the coast is clear to transfer those funds to hide them from me, we will catch them with their hands in the jar. I sent the email at 6 in the morning, making sure my wording sounded pathetic and defeated. I wrote that I was willing to sign the divorce papers immediately in exchange for a small, one-time payout and a promise of peace. I wanted them to think I was too broke to fight and too broken to care. Vivian took the bait instantly. By 9 o'clock, I was walking into the office of their family real estate broker, a neutral ground that felt more like a sterilization chamber. I brought Marina with me, introducing her simply as my cousin there for emotional support, not as the head of compliance for Bennett Ridge. They barely glanced at her. They were too focused on the kill. We sat at a long glass table. Vivian slid a fresh document toward me. It was thinner than the previous one, a quick settlement designed to hush me up for $50,000. "This is generous, considering the scene you caused," Vivian said, smoothing her skirt. I touched the small pendant around my neck. It was not jewelry. It was a high-fidelity recording device Marina had legally cleared for this meeting under the pretext of memorializing the negotiation. I looked across the table at Derek. He looked tired, his eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. "Derek," I said softly, letting my voice tremble just enough to sell the performance. "I need to know one thing before I sign. Be honest with me. Do you want me gone for love, or do you want me gone because of the debt?" The room went silent. Derek looked at his mother, then back at me. The arrogance from the other night was gone, replaced by a frantic, sweaty desperation. I just need everything reset before the bank comes down on us," Derek blurted out, his voice cracking. "I need a clean slate. I cannot lose the house." He had just admitted on tape that the divorce was a financial maneuver to dodge creditors, not an irreconcilable difference. That was the motive. Vivian slammed her hand on the table to silence him. But the damage was done. She turned her venom on me. "We had to take steps, Harlow. We had to freeze your accounts to control the situation. You were spiraling." I kept my face neutral, but internally, I was cheering. She had just admitted to financial coercion. That was the method. Tessa sat next to Derek, playing the role of the supportive new partner. She reached out to touch his arm, murmuring, "It is okay. We just want everyone to be happy." But I noticed her eyes were not on Derek. She kept glancing at her phone, watching for a notification. She was waiting for the wire transfer that would pay her for her part in this play. I think I need a minute," I stammered, standing up unsteadily. "I need some water." I stepped out of the conference room, leaving the door slightly ajar. I counted to 60. When I walked back in, the dynamic had shifted. They thought I was crying in the hallway. Instead, I walked in just in time to see Tessa signing a document Derek had slid in front of her. It was a proxy form for the family trust. I snapped a mental photograph of the header. She was not just the mistress, she was becoming their straw man. Vivian saw me return and decided to twist the knife. She pulled a manila envelope from her bag and tossed a stack of grainy photos onto the glass. They showed me sitting at a coffee shop with a man I did not recognize. "We know you have been unfaithful too," Vivian lied, her lip curling. "If you do not sign today, we release these." Marina finally spoke. She did not raise her voice. She simply leaned forward and tapped the photo. "These are Photoshop composites," Marina said calmly. "If you attempt to enter these into evidence, I will demand a metadata extraction on the original files. Manufacturing evidence is a felony. Vivian, are you sure you want to go there?" Vivian froze. Her bluff had been called before she even finished making it. I picked up the settlement agreement, holding it like it was heavy. "I will sign it," I whispered, watching the tension drain from Derek's shoulders. "But not today. I need one night to say goodbye to this life. I will sign it tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow," Vivian snapped, though I could see the panic in her eyes. She wanted it done now. She needed the money moved now. "Tomorrow," I repeated. I knew that by giving them 24 hours, I was giving them enough rope to hang themselves. Tonight, in their haste to secure the assets before I changed my mind. They would make the illegal transfers they had been planning, and I would be watching. Bennett Ridge Partners did not swoop in like avenging angels in capes. They arrived like a glacier, slow, massive, and utterly crushing. When I dialed into the secure conference line from Owen's kitchen, I was not speaking to family members who wanted to hug me. I was speaking to a team of forensic accountants and corporate litigators who viewed the Halston family not as villains, but as a series of compliance violations. "We have analyzed the Halston Group's liability structure," the lead analyst said, his voice devoid of emotion. "They are leveraged to the hilt. The operating capital is gone." I looked at the notes Marina had faxed over. "I have one condition," I said, pressing the phone tight against my ear. "The manufacturing plant in Ohio employs 300 people. They have families. They have mortgages. We do not touch the payroll. We do not shut down the line. I want the head, not the body." "Understood," Marina replied. "Surgical strike." The legal team had found the weak point in the Halston armor. It was not the mortgage on the house. It was a mezzanine loan the company had taken from a private credit fund called Blackwood Capital. It was a distress loan, high interest, with aggressive covenants. "The loan is for $5 million, the analyst explained. "But here is the catch. The Halstons are currently in technical default because they failed to file their quarterly inventory report last week. Blackwood Capital does not want to deal with a foreclosure. They just want their cash. Buy the debt," I said, my voice surprising me with its authority. "Offer Blackwood 100 cents on the dollar. Take the paper. Once we own the note, we can call the default. We can accelerate the payment immediately due to the reporting violation," Marina added. "Catching on. We can demand full repayment within 24 hours. When they cannot pay, we seize the collateral, but not the factory," I reminded them. "The collateral list includes Vivian's personal art collection and the equity in the Lakeshore estate. We target the luxury assets. We leave the machines running." Owen, who had been listening quietly, slid a piece of paper across the table. "Vivian has a history of playing loose with the family charity fund," he said. "I remember a few years ago she bought a consulting service from a shell company in Delaware. If you can find a link between that charity and her personal expenses, the IRS will be very interested." Then came the piece of luck that turned the tide. The real estate broker, the man who had hosted our settlement meeting, reached out to Marina. It turned out he had been on the losing side of a Bennett Ridge lawsuit 10 years ago. He knew exactly what my family was capable of. He is terrified. Marina told me. He is willing to testify that Vivian pressured him to rush the settlement paperwork. He will confirm she was trying to move assets before a court order could stop her. I spent the next 4 hours building a power map on Owen's dining table. I drew lines connecting Derek's signature to the fake loan, Vivian's directives to the bank, and Tessa's role as the recipient of the funds. It was no longer a messy family drama. It was a RICO chart. It was a structured conspiracy to defraud a spouse. My phone, which I had briefly turned on to check for evidence, buzzed incessantly. It was Derek. The messages had shifted from arrogant commands to frantic pleading. "Harlow, please pick up. Mom is going crazy. She says the accounts are flagged. I did not mean for it to get this bad. We can talk. Tessa is lying to you. Please." I did not block him. I did not reply. I simply archived every text, letting his panic accumulate in the cloud like interest in a bank account. At 4 a.m, the call came through. "The transaction is complete," the analyst confirmed. Bennett Ridge Partners is now the sole holder of the Halston Group's primary debt. We own the note. I stared out the window at the dark outline of the Halston estate down the road. They were sleeping in their beds, thinking they had won, thinking they had bullied me into a $50,000 settlement. They had no idea that the woman they threw out with a suitcase now owned the roof over their heads. "Do we serve the notice?" Marina asked. "No," I said, watching the sun begin to bleed into the horizon. "Not yet. We wait for the court hearing. I want them to walk into that room thinking they are the hunters, so they never see the trap until it snaps." By noon on Monday, The video of me standing on the front steps with my suitcase had been viewed 3 million times. The neighbor who filmed it hadn't just captured a breakup, they had captured an eviction. The internet was a wildfire, and Vivian Halston was trying to fight it with gasoline. She released a formal press statement on Halston Group letterhead, claiming I was suffering from a severe episode and that the family had asked me to leave for my own safety. She called me a liar without using the word, painting a picture of a hysterical woman who needed professional help. I sat in Marina's office, watching the comments roll in. My hands were steady. "Let them talk," Marina said, sliding a thick stack of documents across her desk. "While they are winning the comment section, we are going to win the docket. We filed for an emergency protection order. We didn't submit a sob story. We submitted the bank logs showing my accounts were frozen at 6:30, the security footage of my SIM card being deactivated remotely, and the transcript of the recording from the settlement meeting. The judge didn't need to like me. He just needed to hear Vivian admit to financial coercion." When I walked into the courthouse for the preliminary hearing, I wore a simple gray suit and no makeup. I didn't hide my face behind sunglasses like a celebrity scandal. I walked past the reporters with my head up. When the judge asked me why I was seeking protection, I didn't scream or cry. "Your Honor," I said, my voice quiet but clear in the large room. "I just want to be safe and to be heard." That afternoon, Tessa made her move. She appeared on a popular local podcast, her voice trembling with practiced vulnerability. She told the host that I had been jealous and imagining things for months. She spun a tale of a supportive sister trying to help a mentally ill sibling. It might have worked, if not for one detail. In the promotional photo for the episode, Tessa was holding a microphone, and on her finger was a vintage sapphire ring. It was my grandmother's ring, a Bennett family heirloom I had left in the safe. She didn't have the right to wear it. She didn't even have the right to touch it. I didn't go on a podcast to refute her. I authorized Marina to post a single image to my social media. It was a photograph of the police report I filed regarding the theft of my identity and the illegal lockout, alongside the time-stamped log of my frozen assets. No captions, no emotional paragraphs. Just the cold, hard data. The public tide turned instantly. People didn't need a story. They recognized the receipt of cruelty. Vivian panicked. The sensors Bennett Ridge had placed on the financial network started blinking red. "She is moving money," the lead analyst told us over the speakerphone. "She is initiating a transfer from the Halston Charity Foundation to a holding company in Delaware. $200,000. She thinks she is hiding it. Let it go through," I said, watching the digital line on the screen spike. "Wait until the funds clear. Once the money hits the Delaware account, she has violated the temporary freezing order. That is contempt of court." Derek tried to save himself. He released a statement claiming he was stuck between two women and trying to keep the peace. But the internet is faster than PR. A screenshot from an old text thread between Derek and his college buddy surfaced, leaked, I suspected, by someone who hated him. The text, dated 3 months ago, read, "If she disappears, everything is clean. I just need the reset." It wasn't a love triangle. It was a liquidation plan. Then came the final nail. An encrypted email arrived in my new inbox. It was from a former IT administrator at the Halston Group. He wrote that the security system at the estate did not auto-delete footage after 24 hours, as Derek had publicly claimed. The server retained backups for 30 days. They have the tape, I realized, looking at Marina. They have the footage of them planning it in the study. They have everything! Marina picked up the phone to call the judge. "I am requesting a preservation order for that server immediately," she said, a shark-like grin spreading across her face. "Vivian thinks she can just delete the files tonight. She does not realize that deleting evidence during active litigation changes this from a divorce case to a criminal obstruction charge." The emergency hearing was held in a small, windowless room that smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. Vivian sat across the aisle, clutching a binder thick enough to be a weapon. The label on the spine read Harlow's mental health history in aggressive, bold font. She looked ready to bury me under a mountain of fabricated diagnoses and out-of-context anecdotes. But Marina did not let her open it. "Your Honor," Marina said, standing tall, "before we address the respondent's claims, we would like to call a witness regarding the integrity of the evidence. We call Caleb Rourke." The color drained from Derek's face. Caleb was the former IT director for the Halston Group, a man Derek had fired 2 months ago to cut costs. Caleb walked to the stand, adjusting his tie. He did not look at Derek. "Mr. Rourke," Marina asked, "can you explain the retention protocol for the security system at the Halston estate?" "It is a cloud-based loop," Caleb answered. "It retains audio and video for 30 days. It does not delete after 24 hours, regardless of what Mr. Halston told the press. Also, I have logs showing Mr. Halston accessed the live feed remotely 60 times in the last week to monitor his wife." The judge narrowed his eyes at Derek. "Proceed." Marina connected her laptop to the courtroom monitor. This footage was recovered from the server this morning, dated 4 days before the separation. The screen flickered to life. It showed the study. Derek was sitting on the edge of the desk, and Tessa was pacing back and forth. "The audio was crystal clear. We just need to push her until she snaps." Derek's voice filled the courtroom. "If she leaves voluntarily, we keep the house. We just need the camera to see her screaming." "On the screen?" Tessa laughed. "I will wear her perfume. That usually sets her off." Then Derek delivered the line that sucked the air out of the room. "Lock the accounts today. Leave her no choice but to sign. Starve her out." Vivian jumped up. "This is taken out of context. We were discussing safety measures." "Sit down, Ms. Halston," the judge barked. Marina was not finished. She pulled a document from her briefcase. "Your Honor, the petitioner claims my client is financially irresponsible. However, we found a consumer loan for $50,000 taken out in Harlow Bennett's name 3 weeks ago. The funds were deposited into an account solely controlled by Tessa Bennett." She projected a signature onto the screen. "It was my name, but the handwriting was jagged, hesitant. It was a forgery." "This is not just a divorce case anymore," Marina said, her voice turning cold. "This is identity theft and fraud aimed at destroying my client's credit score to influence custody and support rulings." The judge looked at the document, then at Tessa. "Ms. Bennett, did you sign this application?" Tessa looked at Derek for help, but he was staring at the floor. She looked at Vivian. Vivian's survival instinct kicked in instantly. She smoothed her skirt and looked at the judge with wide, innocent eyes. "Your Honor, my son and I were completely unaware of this criminality. If Tessa has committed fraud, she acted alone. We cannot support such behavior." Tessa's mouth dropped open. The betrayal was absolute. She stood up, her hands shaking violently. You told me to do it," Tessa screamed, pointing a trembling finger at Vivian. "You said if I ruined her credit score, you would put me in the family trust. You said, destroy her name so we can take the assets." The courtroom erupted. The stenographer typed furiously. Vivian's mask of composure shattered into genuine panic. I stood up slowly. I walked over to where Tessa was standing, hyperventilating and crying. She was wearing a silk blouse that I had bought for my birthday last year. "Tessa," I said, my voice low enough that only she in the front row could hear, "you cannot steal my life just by wearing my clothes." The judge slammed his gavel down, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "Order," he shouted. "I have heard enough. I am granting the full protective order against Vivian Halston and Derek Halston. Furthermore, I am impounding these documents. The evidence regarding the loan application and the surveillance will be forwarded to the district attorney's office for an immediate criminal investigation." Derek put his head in his hands. Vivian stared at the wall, her lips moving silently. "They had come to paint me as crazy. but they had just painted themselves into a prison cell. The manila envelope slid under the front door of Owen's house at 2 in the morning. There was no stamp, no return address. Inside, there were photocopies of my private medical records from my OB/GYN, specifically the pages detailing my high-risk pregnancy markers and history of anxiety. Clipped to the front was a typed note. Drop the fraud charges, or the press gets the full mental health history. I did not shake. I did not cry. I picked up the phone and called Marina. They just crossed the line from civil litigation to federal crime. I said, my voice steady. They stole medical data to blackmail a witness. I handed the envelope to Marina the next morning. She handled it with gloves, sealing it in an evidence bag. This is not a threat. Harlow, this is a gift. They are desperate. An hour later, my phone rang. It was Vivian. She used a burner number to bypass the block, her voice dripping with a sickly sweet concern. Harlow, dear, I am calling because I am worried about the baby, Vivian cooed. We just want peace, especially with your iron deficiency. Stress is so bad for that condition. I smiled at the wall. I had never told anyone about the iron deficiency. It was in the file they stole. Thank you for confirming you read the stolen records. Vivian, I said, and then I hung up. The recording was already uploading to the cloud. Marina wasted no time. She forwarded the recording and the police report regarding the stolen files to the bank holding the Halston Group's debt. Vivian withdrew $200,000 from the charity account yesterday to pay off a blackmailer or a lawyer. Marina explained to the bank officer, that violates the asset freeze. We are formally requesting you to call the note. The trap was primed. Now we just had to wait for them to step into it. That afternoon, I walked to my car after a meeting with the forensic accountant. Derek stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. He looked like a ghost of the man I married unshaven, shirt wrinkled, eyes wild. Harlow, please, he shouted, rushing toward me. I held up my hand, stopping him 10 feet away. The security camera above us blinked its red eye. I was tricked. Harlow. Derek stammered, his hands shaking. Tessa. She is crazy. She seduced me. She made me think you did not love me anymore. I can fix this. Just tell the judge it was a mistake. A mistake I asked, my voice cutting through the garage echo. You forged my signature on a $50,000 loan. That is not a mistake. Derek, that is a felony. I got in my car and locked the doors. He banged on the window once, screaming my name, before collapsing against the glass. The camera recorded every second of his instability. The next morning, Tessa tried to hit back. She filed for an emergency restraining order against me, claiming I was stalking her and threatening her life. It was a classic projection tactic. In chambers, the judge looked at Tessa's filing, then at the evidence Marina presented. Your Honor, Marina said calmly, the petitioner claims my client is obsessed with her. Yet, here are the credit card logs showing Ms. Bennett using my client's identity to book a spa weekend 3 days ago. And here is the video of Mr. Halston ambushing my client in a parking garage. The only harassment happening here is directed at Mrs. Bennett. The judge threw Tessa's application out with a scoff of disgust. Desperate. Vivian played her final, ugliest card. She stood up in the preliminary conference and pointed a finger at my stomach. We demand a prenatal paternity test. Vivian shrieked. We have reason to believe that child is not my son's. She is a liar and a cheat. She thought I would refuse. She thought I would beg for privacy to avoid the shame. She wanted to drag it out, to make the press speculate. Marina did not even look at me. She knew the play. Granted, Marina said, cutting Vivian off. We will schedule it for tomorrow. We would love to scientifically prove that Derek Halston abandoned his own child to bankroll his mistress. Vivian's mouth snapped shut. She had hoped for a fight, not a compliance that turned her accusation into a weapon against her son. They want to shame me in the court filings, I told Marina as we packed up our briefcases. So I will let them be shamed by the truth. The notification for the final hearing went out. The press was already camping on the courthouse steps, and in Marina's bag sat the purchase agreement for the Halston Group's debt. We were not just going to divorce court, we were going to a foreclosure. The video played on the massive screens mounted on the courtroom walls. It was the clip from the settlement meeting, the audio enhanced to catch every tremor in Derek's voice. I just need everything reset before the bank seizes everything. The recording of Derek echoed through the silent room. I need a clean slate. I cannot lose the house. The judge paused the video, freezing Derek's face in a mask of desperate greed. He looked down at the defense table. This court hears many divorce cases involving heartbreak, the judge said, his voice deep and resonant. But rarely do we see a petitioner treat his marriage solely as a liability to be liquidated. You did not file for divorce because you were unhappy. Mr. Halston, you filed to defraud your wife of her equity. Vivian tried to stand up, but her lawyer yanked her back down. Marina stood up instead, holding the evidence bag containing the stolen medical records and the threatening note. Your Honor, Marina said, we also submit this envelope, delivered anonymously to my client. It contains confidential medical data stolen from her physician, accompanied by a threat to release it if she did not drop the fraud charges. We have matched the phone logs of the threat to a burner phone purchased by Ms. Halston's driver. The judge's face hardened into stone. He slammed his gavel. I am granting the divorce on the grounds of adultery, financial abuse, and criminal coercion. The judge ruled Ms. Bennett is awarded full legal and physical custody of the unborn child. I am also issuing a permanent restraining order against Vivian and Derek Halston. You are to come nowhere near her or the child. Vivian let out a sharp gasp, but the nightmare was only beginning. As the gavel settled, Marina turned to the back of the courtroom. A representative from Bennett Ridge Partners stood up. One moment, Your Honor, Marina said, her voice cutting through the noise. There is the matter of the Halston family assets. Vivian scoffed. She can have the settlement money. We will write the check. We do not want your check, Marina replied coldly. Bennett Ridge Partners has formally purchased the primary debt obligation of the Halston Group. We now own the $5 million note secured by your estate and your personal assets. We are calling the loan due immediately. Vivian's face went white. That is illegal. You cannot just call it. We can. The bank representative stepped forward. Because you violated the loan covenants yesterday, when you transferred $200,000 to Delaware to pay your legal fees. You violated the asset freeze. That triggered an automatic default. We are foreclosing on the Lakeshore estate and seizing the art collection to satisfy the debt. However, I spoke up for the first time, looking at the workers in the gallery. The manufacturing plant remains open. We are restructuring the management, not the workforce. The employees stay. The Halstons go. Tessa tried to slide out of the row, hoping to disappear into the chaos. Marina blocked her path with a single sheet of paper. Not so fast. Miss Bennett, Marina said. You signed the trust documents claiming to be a single woman eligible for beneficiary status. But our investigators found a marriage license in Nevada from 3 years ago that was never dissolved. You committed perjury on a federal financial affidavit. Every document you signed for the Halston family is void, and you are now liable for fraud. Tessa looked at Derek, then at Vivian, but they were too busy drowning to save her. Derek ran toward me as the bailiffs moved in. He fell to his knees near the aisle, tears streaming down his face. Harlow, please, he begged. Reaching out a hand I refused to take. Just say one word to stop them. We can fix this. I love you. I looked down at him. I felt nothing, no anger, no sadness, just the relief of a fever breaking. You asked me what I was going to do, I said, my voice steady enough for the cameras to catch. You asked if I was going to divorce you. I did something better. I chose the truth, because the truth does not need permission from a man like you. The doors at the back of the room opened, and 2 agents from the fraud division entered. They walked straight to Vivian, presenting a warrant regarding the embezzlement of the charity funds. Her lawyer did not even stand up to defend her. I walked out of the courtroom and onto the marble steps. The sun was shining. I took the pen from my lawyer and signed the final judgment. I did not sign as Halston. I signed Harlow Bennett. I looked straight into the news camera, thinking of the girl standing on the porch with a suitcase just weeks ago. That night, they threw my suitcase down the stairs. I said, today, they threw away their own future with their own signatures and their own greed. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Please let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from. I would love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and smash that hype button to help this story reach even more people.